Welcome back to our channel, guys. And today's topic is all about Renaissance artists and architects. There are three phases of Renaissance architecture. First is the early Renaissance period, in which they include developments in 14th century painting and sculpture. This is usually not the case in architectural history. The bleak economic conditions of the late 14th century did not produce buildings that are considered to be part of Renaissance. As a result, the word Renaissance among architectural historians usually applies to the period 14th century to 15th century AD, or later in the case of non-Italian Renaissances. Historians often use the following designations: Renaissance 1400 to 1500, also known as the Quattrocento, and sometimes early Renaissance period. And in between the High Renaissance and at the third phase is about the Mannerism, or sometimes called the late Renaissance period. Okay, let's go to the term Quattrocento. This pertaining to the word pertaining to the 15th century AD, which the Renaissance period really flourished in the field of arts in architecture. In the Quattrocento, concepts of architectural order were explored and rules were formulated. The study of classical antiquity led in particular to the adoption of classical detail and ornamentation. First well-known architect in the Quattrocento period was Filippo Brunelleschi. Filippo Brunelleschi, 1377 to 1446, one of the most or foremost architects and engineer of Italian Renaissance. He designed the Basilica di San Lorenzo. The Basilica di San Lorenzo interior was so intricately designed with colors. It is a colored interior. Okay, so the Florence also of Italy, the Cathedral of Florence, was also designed by Brunelleschi. This is the dome of the Florence Cathedral with paintings depicting angels, saints, and a whole lot more. Leon Battista Alberti, born February 14, 1404, died April 20, 1472, was an Italian humanist, author, artist, architect, poet, priest, linguist, philosopher, and cryptographer. He epitomized the Renaissance man. Well, that's the man of all trade. He designed the Basilica of Saint Andrea. This is the interior of Basilica Saint Andrea, with a vault design ceilings with recesses. So fantastic design. Lots of carving and paintings. The design employs the Roman arch, the Roman wagon vault, and with floral design depicting the Baroque styles. The facade of Santa Maria Novella. Well, this is a mix of architectural style, like it uses a pointed arc, meaning with a little influence from Islamic architecture, and the curves here indicates that it is in the time of the Baroque period, and the rose window indicates the period of high Renaissance, and still there is what we have seen here are classical columns, and this order is of this column, I guess, is Corinthian. The interior of Santa Maria Novella. It uses a Gothic design inside of the Santa Maria Novella Basilica. Let's go to the High Renaissance. During this High Renaissance, concepts derived from classical antiquity were developed and used with greater surety. The most representative architect is Donato Bramante, 1444-1514, who expanded the applicability of classical architecture to contemporary buildings. His son Pietro in Montorio, 1503, was directly inspired by circular Roman temples. He was, however, hardly enslaved to the classical forms, and it was his style that was dominate Italian architecture in the 16th century. Donato Bramante, 1444-1514, was an Italian architect who introduced Renaissance architecture to Milan and the High Renaissance style to Rome. He designed the dome of the San Pietro in Montorio. Here's the interior of the San Pietro Montorio, still stood today. Raphael Sanzio, 1483-1520. Urbino Raffaello da Urbino Sanzio, better known simple as Raphael, was an Italian painter and architect of the High Renaissance. This is his paintings about the school of Athens. It uses one-point perspective right here. Here's the vanishing point here, and then he banishes all the lines, and he get this one-point perspective interior of the school of Athens. Palazzo Pandolfini is one of his work. The palazzo uses Roman arc with decorative capitals of Ionic columns. So it really represents a touch of the classical period. Piero Ligurio was not so famous in the list of the greatest architects of the Renaissance. Anyway, he is a good architect. He was an Italian architect, painter, antiquarian, and garden designer. So, meaning to say, he is a landscape artist. Ligurio's most important creation was the Bomar Zoo Gardens, the Munsters Park. So he is really a landscape artist because his greatest works was of the gardens, the Bomarzo and the Munster Park. So here's the Bomarzo Park. Not only landscaping, guys, but sculpture. Sculpture is the forte of Ligurio. The Bomarzo Park with 3-head dogs. This dog is depicted in the Greek mythology, the 3-headed dogs. the guardian of the gates of hell. So that's the work of Bumarzo. Make that of Ligario. Also, in the park of Bumarzo Park, there is a sculpture of Hercules and Zeus resting at the right side. The sleeping nymph also can be found in Bumarzo Park. That's why Bumarzo Park is one of his masterpieces. The Fountain of the Nymphs, so many sculpture right here, guys, in the Bumarzo Park. Still, we can visit today this park somewhere in Rome. The Pegasus, the winged horse of the Greek mythology, is the Pegasus, still in a Bumarzo Park. And the winged dragon. How come Ligario conceptualized a dragon which is Chinese in form? Look at that. That is not a medieval dragon. That's a Chinese dragon. He might visited China in his time and then created that sculpture of a Chinese dragon. The winged angel, this is a monster, the beast of the sea. A woman with a tail of a, what is this? Of a snake and a wing of a bat. It's like a dragon, a woman. Okay, so let's go to Mannerism. During the Mannerist period, architects experimented with using architectural forms to emphasize solid and spatial relationships. The Renaissance ideal of harmony gave way to free and more imaginative rhythms. In the Renaissance, one of the famous names was Michaelangelo Buonarroti. 1475-1564, the arch-rival of Leonardo da Vinci. Michaelangelo, known as Michaelangelo, of course. Considered one of the greatest artists ever, he worked in Florence and Rome. Michaelangelo receives his formal education from the painter Domenico Ghirlandaio and the sculptor Bertoldo di Giovanni. In Florence, Michaelangelo becomes acquainted with a classical antiquity which will have enormous influence on his work. There is a rumor that Michaelangelo died a single man. The Capitoline Hill in Rome was designed by Michaelangelo, and this is the Capitoline Hill today. Yes, the old building still stand, but it was already retrofitted in today's time. The St. Peter's Basilica is not designed or was not designed by Michaelangelo but of Raphael Sanzio. Only the painting in the interior of the dome was the work of Michaelangelo. This one. At the ceilings, in the walls, at the dome, are painting of Michaelangelo depicted angels, resurrections, everything about the Bible. Giolio Romano, 1499-1546, was a pupil of Raphael, assisting him in various works for the Vatican. Romano was also a highly inventive designer. He designed the Palazzo del T, employing a Roman arch on entrances and mixed with Greek classical style at the top. and uses classical columns. So still they are using the classical style with a touch of a new design or movement called the Baroque styles. Characteristics. Renaissance style places emphasis on symmetry, proportion, geometry, and the regularity of parts as they are demonstrated in the architecture of classical antiquity and in particular ancient Roman architecture, of which many examples remained. Orderly arrangements of columns, pilasters, and lintels, as well as the use of semicircular arcs, hemispherical domes, niches replaced the more complex proportional system and irregular profiles of the medieval building. The plan of the Renaissance buildings have a square, symmetrical appearance in which proportions are usually based on a module within a church. The module is often the width of the aisle, just like this one. It is cruciform as it is based in religion. Most of the building in the Renaissance was commissioned by architects, which are hired by religious sect or priest to design basilicas in churches. So these are typical design or plan of churches or basilica. All were cruciform in design. The columns and pilasters, the Roman orders of columns are used: the Tuscan, Doric, Ionic, Corinthian, and Composite. The orders can either be structural, supporting an arcade or architrave, or purely decorative, set against a wall in the form of pilasters. During the Renaissance, architects aimed to use columns, pilasters as an integrated system. So here we go with the capital of the columns. These are all classical. Tuscan here first, Doric, Ionic, and then Composite in the bottom. Composite is the mix of Ionic and Corinthian. The Villa Imo, the Villa Capra, Basilica di San Lorenzo, Olympic Theater, arches. Arches are semicircular or, in the Mannerist style, segmental. Arches are often used in arcades supported on piers or columns with capitals. Arches and domes were popular. This was again taken from Roman and Greek architecture. The Santa Maria di Nobelia employed the Roman arc right here. In the center is called the keystone. Palazzo Pandolfini, Palazzo del T Interior, the Olympic Theater, Basilica of Saint Andrea, San Andres of Mantua. The vaults. Vaults do not have ribs. They are semicircular or segmental on a square plan, unlike the Gothic vault, which frequently rectangular. So these are the different types of Roman vault. On top, the barrel vault, followed by the groin vault, the rib vault, and the fan vault. The St. Peter's Basilica, the Villa Capra uses the design of the vault. San Pietro in Montorio, 16th century AD. The Renaissance architectural style was spread in Europe. The 16th century saw the economic and political ascendancy of France and Spain, and then later of Holland, England, Germany, and Russia. The result was that these places began to import Renaissance style as indicators of their new cultural position. This also meant that it was not until about 1500 and later the signs of Renaissance architectural style began to appear outside of Italy. So the Renaissance styles of architecture really spread in Europe up to the Mediterranean Sea. Alright guys, our topic is finished, and don't forget there are questions to answer at the end of this video. Alright class, here are the questions for you to answer. You know where to send your answered paper, right? And just keep the hard copy, for it will be collected before the final exams. Okay, and let's start with the questions. So what are the good questions about Renaissance? We go with number 1. Okay. Number 1 question, what were the main ideas behind Renaissance architecture? Number 2, how was architecture in the Renaissance? Number 3, how did architecture affect Renaissance? Why is Renaissance important? Question to answer. Why is that? Even me, I'm my brain is well, that is a hard question to answer. Why is the Renaissance important? Question to answer, or question answer. Well, I don't have an idea about that, but anyway guys, you can research on internet about the answer, or I will give you a quick look at the answer. It was an incredible time of beauty. That's the answer. Okay, next question. What is the Renaissance summary? So what is the summary in short? Next question. What is Renaissance art and architecture? And then, who made architecture, or where architecture originated? Next questions. What are the 2 styles that were followed by Renaissance architecture? So 2 styles before Renaissance architecture. What is high Renaissance architecture? Okay, so that's all guys. And subscribe our channel guys for more updates. And then make comments, for your comments serve as your attendance. Well, thank you for viewing and listening. See you on our next topic.